The Midwest has been inhabited by human beings for over 15,000 years. In this time, people only began building on top of the area's natural beauty in the past 300 years. And since the Industrial Revolution, because of constantly expanding production, the rise of cities, and our government's inadequate response to pollution, humans have begun destroying this land. In the last few years, alarming research has come out telling us that we only have about a decade to deal with climate change. Scientists predict coastal cities like Los Angeles and Miami will be submerged in water because of rising sea levels. According to ChicagoClimateAction.org, in the Chicagoland area, climate change will cause more illness and death, lower quality of air, more electricity use, higher upkeep for infrastructure, more crime, and more fires. All of this has culminated in increased political and educational involvement in the fight against climate change.
Okay, so the Youth Climate Strike is based off of the U.S. chapter of it, and it's just an idea based off of Greta Thunberg's protesting that the youth care more about our future than adults do, especially adult politicians. So the Youth Climate Strike is just us protesting and trying to get our voice heard, especially since most of us can't vote. So it's our way of being politically active and getting people to still care about what we think. Yeah, I'm worried for my future. I think that we need to do something soon, or else a lot of our opportunities are going to be taken away by something that's really easily avoidable. I think our future's more at stake than adults. We're going to be the ones that are living with the outcomes of their actions, and so it has a bigger effect on us than them. So I think we need to care about it more than a lot of us do. I think it gets a lot of attention, both good and bad, but I think it is overall good because it brings the debate to the table, and that's where people start to gain more awareness about the issues. And some people that might at first think that it's not actually a problem from having so much media attention might actually start to look more into it and realize that it is a problem. And if people do start to care, then there's more likely for action to happen.
The Youth Climate Strike, along with other activist groups like Extinction Rebellion, have held multiple protests in Chicago. These have included school climate strikes, which have drawn thousands of student protesters. According to Grace Hawk of USA Today, one Youth Climate Strike protest was a march from Trump Tower to City Hall, where students staged an 11-minute die-in, symbolizing the 11 years that we have until the predicted point of no return on climate change. Over 200 adult Extinction Rebellion activists protested alongside Youth Climate Strike students.
Honestly, as students and especially being minors, sometimes all we can do is just we can't go into the House of Representatives or the Senate and do anything because of our age. So just being able to stand up and make our voices heard is kind of what we can do at this point. So I just feel it's all that we can do just to show a little support and just voice our opinions.
According to the Chicago Tribune, in the Midwest, climate change has already caused flooding, lower crop yield, extreme heat, and polar vortexes, and these will only get worse with time. A somewhat shocking effect of climate change is the increased amount of meadow tsunamis in the Great Lakes. These massive and destructive waves can last for hours and will only become more common as climate change becomes more serious.
Climate change can only, I think, really be understood properly by looking at a global scale. So you're looking at the poles, you're looking at ice sheets melting at the poles, you're looking at glaciers melting in the mountains, you're looking at oceans, you're looking at temperature fluctuations that normally wouldn't have occurred on land, you're looking at tropical storm strength in the oceans and how that impacts land too. You're looking at drought and rainfall patterns on land too. So really across the planet, it's affecting every habitat and every biome and every ecosystem. Lake Michigan levels have increased, and so some of the dynamics of Lake Michigan have changed as you have greater precipitation, greater runoff, and greater influx into the Great Lake Basin as a whole. But in terms of Chicago, I would assume that there might be data that the summers are getting hotter and the winter precipitation and climate is maybe swinging more wildly as well. On a superficial level, I think most people know that it's carbon dioxide and it's emissions from transportation and stuff like that. I don't think many people understand that methane is a secondary greenhouse gas that is 20 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And then I don't think they understand that methane is such a problem with fracking and with the extraction of natural gas. So as we think of natural gas as a transition fuel, maybe away from coal and oil, we have to understand that the methane that is released from natural gas extraction, especially in the western part of the United States, is really, really problematic. And we are an exporter of natural gas. So we have become this fossil fuel producing nation, similar to how the Middle East was 20, 30, 50 years ago. And we are exporting this natural gas around the world. And I think that's problematic when we are hinging our economy on something that is so damaging, more damaging than carbon dioxide. A second thing I think is also, and this has become I think a little bit more prevalent in the media, is the effect of agriculture and the effect of meat, especially red meat and cattle and beef, and how that is both a habitat destructor and also a producer of methane. In Honors Bio, we talk a little bit about it at the end of the year when we're talking about ecosystems. So we do kind of fold in a little bit of the idea of change and how different biomes are being adversely affected by global change in general. Not always climate change, but it could be like desertification, or it could be the expansion of cattle ranching down in the Amazon or tropical rainforests and deforestation and stuff like that. But we do talk about the adverse effects of human influence on biomes. So we do fold that into the curriculum at the end of the year. With AP Environmental Science, I mean, obviously that is a core component of change. So the first third of the class, we talk about how the planet works and kind of how the ecosystem in terms of matter and energy function. Because only when you understand how a big system functions can you understand how it is dysfunctional. So we start with the functioning of the ecosystem, and then we kind of talk about global climate change and how, with comparison points, it has, the whole system is getting wobbly and off kilter. So there's a lot of data out there, and the kids conduct their own experiments to kind of model that process. And it's difficult to scale things down to the classroom, but you can see what happens under different circumstances. So we allow the kids to kind of poke and push the system a little bit on a small scale to kind of be able to extrapolate that up to the big. So it helps you understand the big system by looking at something that's a little bit more compact. How can we make sustainability part of the ingrained culture of Chicago? We have a great lakeshore, we have great running paths and bike paths. A few more steps would kind of, I think, really be a positive movement to making Chicago more of a leader. We're there, kind of, sort of, but there's more to be done, I think, for sure. Direct change might be difficult, but definitely as an activist, educated population, showing up down in the city of Chicago and, like Climate March and just being aware of these issues that are going to be impacting, young people's world, I mean, in the next 20, 30, 40 years and beyond, obviously. I think high school students have, skin in the game, for sure. This is their world that they're going to be inheriting. So I hope it trickles that way throughout their consciousness and forward. So I'm very cautiously optimistic. I'm hoping by the time I retire from Lombard West that we are well on our way to something different than